Okay, brethren, when we've been looking at Preterism recently, I've said that the idea of Preterism is that in 70 AD, when the Romans destroyed Jerusalem and the temple, that was the fulfillment of all prophecy. All end-time prophecy was fulfilled in 70 AD. If that's the case, then you have to assume that the beast power prophesied in the book of Revelation and so on was in fact the Roman Empire, because it was the Roman Empire that destroyed Jerusalem and the temple. Therefore, the beast power, as in prophecy, must be the Romans. And of course, that's what preterists believe. It was the Romans, it was the Roman Empire, and indeed Emperor Nero, they suggest, was in fact the Antichrist of the book of Revelation. All right? But like I've said before, if you look for biblical evidence identifying Rome as being in prophecy, you'll struggle quite a bit, because it's, as far as I can make out, Rome is not there. Now, previously I've mentioned three very popular passages where people point to say, there's Rome, look, there's Rome there. Rome definitely is identified in prophecy, it's the end-time beast, etc. One of them was Daniel chapter 2, the statue with the four metals, and people say, well, the fourth metal empire, the legs of iron, is Rome. Everybody knows that. But of course, that actually fails prophecy, which requires the fourth empire of iron to decack, to pulverize, smash, fragment all the ones that came before it. And Rome didn't do that, so it utterly fails. The next place people tend to go is to Revelation 17, to the city on seven mountains, which somehow transmutes, as you're watching it, to the city built on seven hills, which everybody knows is Rome. Of course, Scripture doesn't say seven hills, it says seven mountains. It tells you what they are. Seven kingdoms. 5 have gone, one's left, one's yet to come. So that doesn't work either at all. And then the last place I think we looked last week was in Daniel chapter 9, the 70 weeks prophecy, where the prince who is to come is said to be a Roman. Therefore, the Roman prince, Roman Antichrist, whatever. But showed last week that doesn't stack up either. So that's the sort of three most popular passages, and I thought I'd done them all, but then I realised a few days ago that I've omitted one. Oops, didn't mean to do that, but it just obviously slipped away from me. And that is one we'll look at today, or at least that's where we'll start looking today. And what I did say last week was that if it wasn't Rome, who else could it be? Because that's some people's question. Well, if it wasn't Rome, if the iron legs aren't Rome, who were they? Who could they be? To which the answer I suggested last week was the Islamic empires. Because Islam started in the early 600s AD and it burst forth breakneck speed and it destroyed, pulverized, fragmented, crushed to pieces Babylon, Persia, which the Romans had tried to do for 600 years and failed. And then the Islamic empires crossed the Middle East through Europe, into Spain, into France briefly, and so North Africa. So the Islamic empires were super powerful, and they spread at a dramatic pace across much of the world in those days. So I've suggested that the legs of iron, the fulfillment of prophecy, is down to the Islamic empires, not Rome. But the one I missed out, I want to look at now. So if you open your Bibles to Daniel chapter 7, we can have a read of the first 8 verses to start with. So Daniel 7, and reading verses 1 through 8. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, that's the guy who saw the writing on the wall, many tekel upharsin, and the very self-same day the Medes and Persians overthrew Babylon. This is the particular Belshazzar concerned. He was the last king of Babylon. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head while on his bed. Then he wrote down the dream, telling the main facts. Daniel spoke, saying, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and 4 great beasts came up from the sea, each different from the other. The first beast was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. I watched till its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And suddenly another beast, a second, like a bear. It was raised up on one side, and had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth, and they said thus to it, Arise, devour much flesh. After this I looked, and there was another, like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast. But unlike being a lion, or a bear, or a leopard, this beast is not apparently like anything that you can think of that you would normally come across in the jungle or wherever. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, which is that word decac, meaning fragment, pulverize, crush to pieces, breaking in pieces and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. And there, in this latter horn, were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous or arrogant words. So 4 beasts, and the 4th beast isn't likened to anything. It's just a great, terrible beast, and it's different from the 3 that came before it. How could it be different? I mean, a lion's different from a bear, different from a leopard, but this is entirely different. Right? It's not even, I think, like an animal creature. It's just totally, utterly different in every way, shape, and form from those that came earlier. And this particular one is the one that crushes and pulverizes and smashes to smithereens, right? And it's got 10 horns. But among the 10 horns, another one appears, which is a pompous, arrogant horn, which plays quite an important role in prophecy. So those are the 4 beasts of Daniel chapter 7. I think we've got a couple of slides we can show you. You've probably seen these before. So there's the first 3 beasts there, a lion, a bear, and the leopard having 4 heads. And then another beast, it's an artist's impression of a dreadful and terrible beast, and he's entirely different from the other more normal beasts of the jungle, right? And it's got all these iron teeth and all the rest of it. So a really nasty beast, which is the one that intrigues Daniel the most. Now, I think when I've looked at prophecy in the past and listened to people talking of prophecy in the past, I've got the impression that most people think these 4 beasts of Daniel 7 are just a replay, a repeat of the 4 metals of Daniel chapter 2. The 4 metals of the statue in Daniel chapter 2 are 4 kingdoms, right? Gold and silver and bronze and iron, 4 kingdoms. This is it. It's just a repeat, just a simple repeat. The 4 kingdoms that we've identified already in Daniel 2, including, of course, Rome for the iron legs. It's the same 4 kingdoms here. It's just a repeat. There's nothing more to it, just different way of expressing the same thought. I don't think that's the case. In Daniel chapter 2, the 4 metals are historic. It starts the days of Nebuchadnezzar, ancient Babylon, 600 odd BC, and it runs one after another, after another, after another, up until the arrival of Jesus Christ as a stone that smashes it, and it falls over and breaks up and gets blown away by the wind. Right? So if this is the same here, if these 4 beasts in Daniel 7 are just ancient history, the lion represents ancient Babylon, 600 BC, and so on. Well, in many ways, why would we care? What interest have we got nowadays in ancient Babylon or ancient Medo-Persia? Right? Not a lot. I mean, academically, you might think, it's nice to know these things, but in real terms, are you particularly bothered about ancient Babylon, ancient Medo-Persia of 400, 500 BC? That's 2,500 years ago. Why would we be interested? On the other hand, if the 4 beasts of Daniel 7 are end-time beasts, end-time entities, then we might well be quite interested in who they are and what they are and how it all plays out, right? And I think we're probably going to face them. So whilst we're here, have a look at Daniel chapter 7, verse 17. those great beasts which are four kings which arise out of the earth. Now that's the New King James translation. Four kings which arise. It doesn't really say much about the timing of when they arise, but most translations say these are four kings which will in the future arise. Here's some translations here. The NIV, the nearly inspired version, four kings that will rise. Or the New American Standard Bible, four kings who will arise. Or the ESV, the English Standard Version, four kings who shall arise. The RSV, four kings who shall arise. And the King James did not a bad job there, four kings which shall arise. So most translations bring out that these four great beasts, which are four kings which will arise, not have arisen, but will arise. Well, could you really say that about, say, Babylon? Is Babylon going to arise in the future? Don't think so. Belshazzar is the last king of Babylon. If you're saying four kings who will arise, Belshazzar's already arisen and he's about to go his way. His reign is almost over. You know, the reign of Babylon is almost over. After several hundred years, is about to disappear, to be overtaken by Medo-Persia in about 5 or 10 years' time from when this prophecy takes place. So to say these are four kingdoms which will arise makes no sense, because Babylon is almost finished. Four kings who will arise. Well, Belshazzar is the last king of Babylon. He's not going to arise. He's going to disappear. He's going to demise, not arise. So, that then doesn't make a lot of sense if these are just to be the four kingdoms of Daniel 2 over 2,500 years, because it says these four kings or kingdoms will in the future arise. My suggestion is going to be they're going to arise in the end time, because this is an end time prophecy, not just a repeat of Daniel chapter 2 using different words. And if you look at verses 11 and 12, I watched then because of the sound of the pompous words which the pompous horn was speaking. I watched till the beast was slain. This is the fourth beast, the great terrible beast. Daniel says, I watched till the beast was slain and its body destroyed and given to the burning flame. So the fourth beast destroyed. All right. As for the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. Well, that's not Daniel 2. In Daniel 2, the statues there, the gold, the silver, the bronze, the iron, stones cut out, flashes down, strikes the statue on its feet, it falls over, everything breaks up and it's all blown away simultaneously. But here it tells you the fourth beast is destroyed, but the other three beasts are left to continue, well, for a season and a time, however long that might be. So they're, in other words, they're not all destroyed at once, as in Daniel 2. And it's pretty evident here, surely, I would have thought, reading the language, that these four beasts are contemporaneous. Daniel 2, four kingdoms, Babylon, and then later Persia, then later Greece, then later Rome, if you want to go down that route, or Islam. Right, four kingdoms that stretch over 2,500 years, one after another, after another, after another. But here, right, the fourth beast is destroyed, and the other three are left to continue for a while. In other words, the four beasts are actually contemporaneous. They exist at the same time. They're not one after another over thousands of years. They're all there at the same time, all at once. I think we've got a slide that sort of tries to show that. So the Daniel 2 statue, the kingdoms are sequential, and they're all destroyed by the stone that strikes the feet. On the other side, Daniel 7 beasts, all four are concurrent, contemporaneous. Right? The fourth terrible beast is destroyed first, leaving the other three continuing for a while. So hopefully that sort of suggests that Daniel 7 is not just a simple repeat in different pictures, different language of Daniel 2, right? Now, I think the nations are the same. I think the identity of the gold, the silver, the bronze, and the iron, I think the identity of the lion and the bear and the leopard and the great terrible beast are the same identities. But very different periods. One is historic, over 2,500 years, and one is all end time. You and I will see them all at the end time, right? Now, of course, most people, for reasons we've expressed in other weeks, identify the iron legs as Rome, not, and then identify the great terrible beast as Rome. Well, it makes sense. If you go in one way with Daniel 2, you probably end up with the same misunderstanding, same conclusion in Daniel 7. Oh, the fourth beast is Rome. Everybody knows that. Well, I don't think that's the case, right? And it's not a surprise that people might get this wrong. If you turn to Daniel 12, it pretty much tells us that people are going to get the wrong end of the stick. Daniel 12, let's read verses 4 and 9. But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book of Daniel that is, until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. Verse 9. And the angel said, Go you away, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Right? So the words of Daniel, the prophecies of Daniel are sealed up until the time of the end. So therefore, if you're looking at any commentary, any explanation, like Isaac Newton's, for example, back in time, they can't help it. Even if they were devout and genuine and worked extremely hard, and I'm sure many of them did, they couldn't understand the totality of Daniel because it's sealed up till the time of the end. And in fact, there might yet be parts of Daniel still to be revealed, depending on how close we are today to the time of the end. But I think we can certainly understand a lot more of Daniel than people like, Sir Isaac Newton and others did. The great commentators of the past, they tried hard. They did a brilliant job with the knowledge they had, but it's sealed till the time of the end. And if these guys came 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, then they couldn't really make much of it, could they? Did their best. So when you're looking at sort of the interpretation of these beasts, these creatures, I think the first three nobody has a problem with, but like Daniel 2, first three everybody's fairly happy with. The lion is modern day Babylon, like Babylon as in the gold head of the Daniel 2 statue. The lion is the first empire. It's Babylon, which today Babylon, modern Babylon, is Iraq. Capital being Baghdad. I think you're all familiar with Iraq from the Iraqi war, not too many years ago. The bear, the one that is the second beast, is Persia, Medo-Persia, just as the silver chest was, Medo-Persia in the Daniel 2 statue. And today we generally name Persia as Iran. It's the same place, just a different name in the last few decades. And then the third in the statue of Daniel was Greece, or Javan, and the leopard is Greece or Javan, and Javan is more of a region, and the main nation there at the moment is Turkey. Asia Minor is sort of the region, but Turkey is the big player today. But remember, the leopard had 4 heads, each head being, I think, representing a nation. So it's a coalition of 4 nations, of which Turkey would, I imagine, be the dominant leading nation. It's got a massive military in Turkey, so it's quite powerful, quite big, and got a great history of ruling and so on. And then, of course, you've got the fourth great and terrible beast, and that's the one that Daniel was most interested in. That's the one, I guess, that you and I are quite interested in. I think we've got a couple of maps, which might be useful at this time, just to remind you of some things. So there's the area of Babylon, and the ancient city of Babylon, where Nebuchadnezzar dwelt, the head of gold, is located right close to modern Baghdad, the capital of Iraq. And you've got the boundaries there of Iraq, and just to the east of Iraq, you've got Iran. And there's Susa, that's the capital of the old Persian Empire, and that's where Daniel was when he saw the Daniel 8 vision. Iran, of course, in the news at the moment, with Israel having attacked Iran in the last couple of days or so. So, and of course, those countries, as you saw there, are to the east. That's, of course, where Islam burst forth and overtook all those countries there. The Roman Empire was way 1,000 miles, 2,000 miles to the west, different part of the world. So let's have a look at Daniel 7, and let's read verses 15 to 18. Look more closely at this fourth beast. Daniel 7 and verse 15. I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit within my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. Gave him nightmares, so to speak. I came near to one of those who stood by and asked him the truth of all this. So he, an angel, I guess, told me and made known to me the interpretation of these things. Those great beasts which are four kings which will, in the future, from now, arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. And I think even that verse there tells you it's end time fulfillment, because he's talking about the saints inheriting the kingdom of God, right? Which happens not 2,000 years ago, happens right in the end time. So these beasts which will arise, I think they have their relevance in the end time, at which point the saints will inherit the kingdom. Verses 19 through 20. Then I wished to know the truth about the fourth beast, which was different from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, with its teeth of iron, its nails of bronze, which devoured, broke in pieces, Dekak in the Assyrian, and trampled the residue with its feet. And I also want to know about the 10 horns that were on its head, and the other horn, which came up, before which 3 fell, namely, that horn which had eyes and a mouth, which spoke pompous words, arrogant horn, whose appearance was greater or more stout than his fellow horns. So he's very curious about, this fourth beast, because it looks different. It says there, it's different from all the others. What could that mean? I can only speculate as to exactly what the angel meant when it's different from all the others. But obviously, you've got a lion and a bear and a leopard, which are just creatures that you meet in the jungle. But this is different. Babylon, Persia, the Greek Empire of Alexander the Great, they're all, if you like, standard national empires. But the fourth one, if it's Islam, which I believe it is, the Islamic empires are very different, because they're not national. It's a religious theme. It's Islam. Started with the Arabians, and it merged over time, became finally the Ottoman Turks and so on. So I think a religion like Islam is different in nature to Babylon, Persia, or Greece. So I think that's probably what it's hinting at when it says different from all the others. Moving on to verses 21 to 22. I was watching, and the same horn, this pompous horn with the eyes, was making war against the saints and prevailing, unfortunately, against them until the Ancient of Days came. So how long is this little horn, this pompous horn, going to attack the saints? In ancient history, petering out 2 centuries ago, see the relevance of that a bit later, right? No, it says the little horn will attack the saints and prevail up until Jesus Christ's return. So it's still ahead of us. This pompous horn will be attacking and prevailing against the saints of God even ahead of us in the next few years, right? Until the Ancient of Days came and a judgment was made in favor of the saints of the Most High, and the time came for the saints to possess the kingdom, yet future, end time. So this whole chapter and the 4 beasts, I believe, are definitely in the end time. Don't confuse with Daniel 2, which was prophecy looking ahead over 2,500 years in total. This is all in the end time. Verse 23 to 25. Thus he, the angel, said, the fourth beast shall be a fourth kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all other kingdoms. It's an Islamic realm, which involves many countries, but all with the same philosophy, the same idea, the same God, and shall devour the whole earth, trample it, and break it in pieces, Dekak. And of course, Rome never did any of that. The 10 horns are 10 kings who shall arise from this kingdom, and another shall arise after them, the pompous horn. He shall be different from the first ones, and shall subdue 3 kings. He shall speak pompous words against the Most High, shall persecute or harass the saints of the Most High, shall intend to change times and law. Then they, it says saints in New King James, but it's in italics, then they, I think meaning the times and law, shall be given into his hand for a time and times and half a time, about 3.5 years, in other words. So that's what lies ahead. You've got this fourth beast, different from all the rest. 10 horns are 10 kings or 10 kingdoms. So I think what we're looking at there is an Islamic realm made up of 10 Islamic nations. The 10 horns are 10 kings or 10 kingdoms in a powerful group, a coalition of 10 at the end times. And then there'll be this pompous horn among them, right, who I believe will be the Antichrist, and will speak pompous words against God, shall persecute the saints of the Most High up until the end, until Jesus returns, right? It says there, shall intend to change times and law. Again, you have to speculate perhaps quite what that might mean. My surmise is that the law that might be changed, or that he intends to change, would be to introduce and magnify Sharia law, because majority Muslim countries, it's a bit patchy, have Sharia law. Sharia law is Islamic law based upon the teachings of Muhammad, either in the Quran or in the various hadith, right? It's Sharia law. It's very different. It can affect things like marriage, divorce, crime, things of that nature, Sharia law. And it's rather different from, say, English common law. But strangely enough, even in the UK today, a significant number of British Muslims would like to see Sharia law introduced. It's not going to happen, well, not soon. I mean, it might happen.
This year.
Might happen ultimately because the Muslim movement is quite strong in the UK. A lot of Muslims here, and they're quite pushy about getting their values and their ways, and that applies in other countries as well, of course. But surveys have shown that something like about between 1/3 and 40% of British Muslims would like Sharia law. So here it says this pompous, arrogant leader of Islam wants to change times and law. And I think the law in question is going to be a desire to make Sharia law the normal default law in all the countries under their jurisdiction. And change times, that could be a reference to the Islamic calendar. They have their own calendar. That's where you get Ramadan from and things of that nature, and so on and so forth. Now, the traditional view of the commentators who gave their thoughts and ideas prior to the end times is that this fourth beast is Rome. And I guess they're working off of Daniel 2, because I've assumed that the legs of iron are Rome, then these 4 beasts are the same kingdoms, so therefore the great terrible beast is Rome, right? And of course we saw that Rome didn't decack anybody. So, I mean, that just utterly fails. You saw there, the fourth beast talks about decack, pulverizing, smashing, fragmenting, or breaking to pieces. And Rome didn't do that. Right? And it never overcame Persia, not even once, in 600 years of trying. So you got the traditional idea is this fourth terrible beast is Rome. Rome is said to have suffered a deadly wound in 476 AD, when the Western Roman Empire sort of fell, that's what historians say. And then the 10 horns, this is what I used to believe, by the way, because I heard all this and believed all this. The 10 horns came out of the healed Roman Empire. The 10 horns come one at a time. They're consecutive. So one horn then fades away, and then the second horn fades away, the third horn, the fourth horn, and so on. And some of the horns are quite well-known figures in European history: Charlemagne, Otto the Great, Napoleon. 9 horns have been in God, and there's 1 horn still to come. That's why prophecy is future. There's 1 horn left to come, right? And the little horn, the pompous little horn, is the papacy. Very handy. right? And the papacy made war with the saints, right? For times and half a time, which is 1260 days, which converts into years by a piece of magic. So prestidigitation, 1260 days becomes 1260 years, right? And then you decide that you'll start the count from, let's say, 554 AD, the imperial restoration of the deadly wounded Rome. And from 554 AD, you count 1260 years of persecution of the saints, ending in 1814 AD at the defeat of Emperor Napoleon. It all adds up, right? But thinking, well, that basis, the persecution against the saints finished 200 years ago. It's not end time. It's not yet future. If you go with 554 AD, the imperial restoration of Rome, which had been mortally wounded, and it was somehow resurrected in 554 AD, and then you add on 1260 days, being 1260 years, that the pompous horn persecutes the saints. That brings you to 1814, which coincides with the fall of one of the horns, Napoleon, Emperor Napoleon, and that's it. So the little horn finished warring against the saints 200 years ago. Nothing to do in the future. Well, no, I think we saw earlier, tried to sort of say, look, you can see that the fourth beast makes war against the saints until the coming of the Ancient of Days. Hasn't finished 200 years ago. It will keep going right up to Jesus Christ's return, right? And that's going to take place largely through the tribulation, the Great Tribulation. The saints will be persecuted and martyred, right, by the pompous horn right up to Jesus' returns. It's not something that ended in 1814, right? Have a look at Daniel 12. I have another scripture or two about the persecution. So Daniel 12. Read verses 6 through 11. And one of these angels said to the man clothed in linen who was above the waters of the river, How long shall be the fulfillment of these wonders? Then I heard the man clothed in linen who was above the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand to heaven and swore by him who lives forever, it shall be for a time, times and half a time, which is 3.5 years, 1260 days. And when the power of the holy people has been completely shattered, all these things shall be finished. But it seems to imply that the saints are going to be persecuted and harassed to the point of not much left. And that'll going to take a time, times and half a time, 3.5 years or thereabouts. Although I heard, I did not understand. And then I said, My Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And then again he says, Go your way, Daniel. The words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. And like I said earlier, it's possible there's still revelation to be revealed, because we may not yet be quite fully into the time of the end, so it could be more to come that we'll understand in a year or 2 or 3's time. Verse 10, Many shall be purified, many saints we're talking about, many shall be purified, made white and refined, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. And from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away, and the abomination of desolation is set up, there shall be 1,290 days. So that's one of the 4 places in the book of Daniel where we've got the sacrifices being stopped and the abomination being set up. And Jesus said in Matthew 24, when the abomination is set up and you see it, as described by Daniel the prophet, right, then the Great Tribulation will start, which will last in total about 3.5 years. Well, for the saints, that will be slightly shortened. And it says there are 1,290 days. So there is a troublesome time coming, on the believers, and it's in the future. It's not something in the ancient past, right? So what we're looking at, this fourth beast and the persecution, the harassment of the pompous horn yet in our future, a couple of places we can look in the New Testament. So let's try Revelation 12. Revelation in chapter 12. And we'll read verses 13 through 17, Revelation 12, starting in verse 13. Now when the dragon, obviously Satan, the devil, saw that he'd been cast to the earth, he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child, being, of course, Jesus. But the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness to her place, where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time from the presence of the serpent. 3.5 years again. So the serpent spewed water out of his mouth like a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away by the flood. But the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon had spewed out of his mouth. So the dragon loses out, tries hard to get the woman, but she flees away, and the earth comes to her rescue, and so the dragon's got nothing, loses out completely. Not quite. Verse 17, and the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went to make war with the rest of her offspring, who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Well, that sounds like a description of you and me. The dragon goes off to make war with the rest of her offspring, who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Well, I think you and I probably like to think that we keep the commandments of God, that we have the testimony of Jesus Christ as our Saviour, our Master, in whom we have trust and belief, and we keep the commandments. So the dragon's off to make war at this point in time with the saints, with the commandment keepers, right? But I've said before, I don't think Satan can just do that on his own. I don't think he's some sort of magic wand. He can just wave it over the saints and they all suddenly start dropping down on the pavement, right? The dragon wants to do that. He's going to make war, but he has to use some physical force to do that. He can't. He's a spirit being, right? I don't think he can do that just on his own, but by sort of thinking, and saints start dropping everywhere like flies. I think the dragon has to employ the forces of human beings to carry out his wishes there. That's where we get chapter 13 and the beast turning up. So ignore the chapter break. We've got the dragon going off to make war. Chapter 13, as we call it, tells us exactly how he goes about doing that. Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard, his feet were like the feet of a bear, his mouth like the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. So here's another beast, the beast of Revelation, right, who has 7 heads. Well, I think most scholars at least, recognize this as a sort of composite beast of the 4 beasts of Daniel 7. This beast has 7 heads. The beasts in Daniel 7, the lion had a head, the bear had a head, the great terrible beast has a head, that's 3, but the leopard had 4 heads, that's 7 heads. And of course we saw the 10 horns mentioned in Daniel 7. So this beast here has 7 heads and 10 horns, and you can see the composite ingredients. Verse 2, a leopard, a bear, a lion. Exactly what we see in Daniel chapter 7. I think we've got a slide where an artist has tried to sort of render what he thinks the Daniel 13 beast might look like. So you got a lion and a leopard, and you got teeth and all the rest of it. So that's a rendition by an artist of what he thinks the Revelation 13 beast looks like. Let's move on. Verse 3. And I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed. For those going to the Roman model, that's 476 AD, but this is all end times as far as I'm concerned. And all the world marvelled and followed the beast. So they worshipped the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, who is like the beast, who is able to make war with him? So the beast clearly has military potential, because the world seems to admire and even fear the beast. Who can make war with this organization, this empire, made up of a lion, a bear, a leopard, and a dragon empowering it, right? So it's the composite end-time fulfillment of the four beasts of Daniel 7. That appears to be the understanding we should take. And he was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, well, like the little horn that spoke great things and blasphemies. And he was given authority to continue for 42 months, 3.5 years. Same period appears yet again. Then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. It was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, to prevail against them, as Daniel 7 said. And authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. So international influence, international power, international authority. But notice the saints are being attacked. Make war with the saints. This is what the dragon's motivating this. The dragon wants to go against those who keep the commandments of the testimony of the Lord Jesus Christ. The dragon can't do it directly himself. He's a spirit being, doesn't have that sort of level of impact in the physical world. So he's able to find a beast, an empire that's filled with arrogance and hatred, and he uses them against the saints. Right? And this beast continues for 3.5 years, during which time it attacks and harasses the saints and overcomes them. So you've got martyrdom there, I believe. Verse 8, all who dwell on the earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. So the whole world is impressed by this beast power, right? Now I believe all of this is future, right? I believe this making war against the saints is future. It's not preterist 70 AD. I don't think this is the Roman model of 1260 years, starting 554 AD with the imperial restoration of Justinian and expiring in 1814 with the death of Napoleon. I don't think this is all, as far as I'm concerned, end time prophecy, because the four beasts of Daniel 7 will arise. We're not looking at Daniel 2 and 2,500 years of history. We're talking about the end time. So I think what we're looking for is a powerful Islamic empire with 10 nations in a coalition, 10 horns, 10 nations, 10 kings, right? And it's running up to the return of Jesus Christ. So I'm not there yet. I'm not sure when the Lord Jesus will return. I hope it's not too far away.
Because you're older now, yeah?
Because I'm getting older now. I haven't got as much time to hang about and wait.
Nor me.
But, sometime in the next X number of years,
Like it 2 or 3.
these 10 Islamic nations are going to coalesce, right? And they're going to attack the saints, the Christians. Well, they're still doing that at the moment. Every single week there are a number of Christians in this world killed. There's thousands and thousands every year are killed, right? Mostly by Islamic people and other countries and so on. There are websites that keep account of how many Christians are being killed and destroyed and wounded, by Islam. It's quite a significant number.
You're going to give some background about Islam.
Just a little bit of background about Islam, not going into it too much. But Islam, you might think, is just a religion. It is a religion, but it's not just a religion. Islam has a political element to it. Islam wants to overcome the world, right? Islam wants to rule the world. It's its prime directive. It's not just a personal religion, like you might be a Christian and your town might not be a Christian at all. So there's individual Christians here and there. There are individual Muslims here and there, but the Islamic religion has a desire, an objective, an aim of taking over the whole world for Allah, because that's the only way you can have peace, when everybody agrees that Allah is the true God and Muhammad is his prophet. Until you get to that point, there can only be friction and wars. So you have to get to that point. And most Muslim countries, perceive that to be real. It's not a dream. They expect it will come to pass. There's two sides to it. One group of Muslim countries, I think Saudi Arabia might be in this particular group, not 100% sure, but they see this happening over time because they're sending out money, they're sending out missionaries, They're setting up Islamic study centers in most American universities to attract students at universities to become Muslims, and it's working.
Especially in America.
It's working reasonably well, and their view is that we've got time in our hands. You know, it might take another 150 years to convert America to becoming an Islamic nation. It might take a lot less than that in Britain. They reckon another maybe 40, 50 years, Britain might be largely Islamic, an Islamic republic perhaps in 50 years' time. So these countries, Islamic countries, think we've got time in our hands. It might take 100 years, it might take 150, we'll get there. And eventually all these countries, France, the USA, Canada, Britain, they'll all be Islamic. And that's where we want to be. And that's what they expect to happen. They're working towards that. Other Islamic countries don't fancy waiting 150 years. They want to see it happen much more rapidly, so they're more prepared to take forceful action, like jihad, to try and bring about the changes much more rapidly, right, and sort of force it through. Now, throughout history, Islam has overtaken country after country after country. I think I mentioned last week, if you go back to, let's say, roughly 500 AD, all of the Middle East, all of North Africa, all of Asia Minor was Christian, right? The whole world was Christian. I mean, really Christian, powerfully Christian. The West, Rome, France, Germany was Christian, but a sort of weaker version. The real enthusiasts were North Africa, the Middle East, into Asia Minor. The big Christian centers were Alexandria in Egypt, Antioch in Asia Minor, Jerusalem, Constantinople, and in the West, Rome. But there was only one Christian center in the West, that was Rome. Everything else was in the Middle East and North Africa. 200 years later, it was all gone. 200 years later, Islam had driven out, that's one way of phrasing it, driven out Christianity. And now all North Africa is Muslim. All the Middle East is Muslim. Asia Minor is Muslim. Even coming into Europe, Spain was Muslim. And even part of France temporarily was Muslim. And at various times, the Muslims tried to came as far as Austria. In the 1600s, I think it was, up to the gates of Austria. Right? So Islam was powerful. It took over country after country after country. And they always have three options that are available to you when they take over a country. So when they take over, eventually, as in their eyes, take over the USA, take over Britain, you'll get three choices. It's traditional. Number one is convert to Islam, in which case you're good to go, one of us. Secondly, you accept what they call dhimmi status, D-H-I-M-M-I. If you become a dhimmi, that means you accept that you're subjugated. You're an inferior citizen. You don't get the rights of your Muslims around you. You're inferior. You're humiliated. And you have to pay a tax. You're already paying taxes, but this is another tax called the jizya, which you pay to be recognized as a dhimmi. So convert, become a dhimmi, or the third option is have your head chopped off. Death. That's basically it, right? And that's what was offered to people in North Africa and the Middle East. Do you want to become one of us? Or become a second-rate citizen with hardly any rights? Or do you want to die? Of course, a fair number of them, I'm not sure about the dying part. I might convert. And then, of course, you're good to go. You're one of us. You have the same rights as everybody because you're a Muslim, right? A Mohammedan, you could call them. And today, already on the earth, about 1.8 billion to 2 billion Muslims. That's about 25% of the world's population. 1 in 4 of people on planet Earth are Muslims. 25% of countries on planet Earth are Muslim majority countries. So very big, powerful and influential today, let alone 25 years from now. I think we've got another map we can show you there. So there's Islam, 1/4 of the population. It's also 1/4 of the countries. There's nearly 200 countries on the earth. About 50 of them are majority Muslim countries, and even in landmass, somebody's done a sort of measure of the land in square miles and so on, and about 25% of the land mass is Muslim. All the green countries there, which is all of North Africa, all the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, way up into Asia, down into Pakistan, Indonesia, the little islands in the bottom right corner, all of it. So the Muslims are quite convinced they'll do it. They will convert the world to Allah, either by you converting or by being offered the opportunity not to die by beheading. Right, so we're in Revelation 13. Let's read on a little bit. Because we've got the beast, which I think is this Islamic empire in the end time with 10 countries making it up. And obviously a very powerful leader. I think I've said in the past, I think the most likely leader is going to be a man that the Muslims are looking forward to, the Mahdi, M-A-H-D-I, the Mahdi. Islam has its own end-time prophecies, just as evangelists and most Christians do. Islam is the same. They've got their end-time expectations. They expect a charismatic, powerful, super-duper leader, the Mahdi, right? And if that is the case, the guy leading this empire will be their Mahdi, and they will respond to him. They'll worship him. But there'll be a second beast as well, a sort of partner. That's verses 9 through 11. No, Revelation 14.
13.
Revelation 13.
11 to 18.
11 to 18. Then I saw another beast, a second beast, coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, spoke like a dragon, and he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell on it to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. He, this second beast, performs great signs, so that he even makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. This is what I think we often refer to as the false prophet, the big false prophet, which, by the way, Islam is expecting. Their Mahdi, their charismatic political leader. They're also expecting a false prophet, a prophet to come along with the Mahdi. They don't think of him as a false prophet. I do. They see him as a real prophet. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast, who was wounded by the sword and lived. He was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. Well, nothing new there for Islam or this false prophet who's going to support and work alongside the Islamic Mahdi. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. Ooh, super mysterious. The mark of the beast, and if you don't have the mark of the beast, you can't buy or sell, right? So definitely you want the mark of the beast, so you can buy or sell, right? Makes sense. People say, oh, I wonder what the mark of the beast is. Could be a credit card of some sort. You have to sign up and get a credit card with the Mahdi's picture on the front or something. Could it be microchips? So they put something, click, into your wrist and or your hand or your forehead, so you can, lean against a reader. They can check out your bank account details and put a debit through, whatever. Or like in olden days, it doesn't make a lot of sense now, Sunday keeping. That was always seen as potentially the mark of the beast, right? But do you want it? Well, I want to buy and sell. I want to buy groceries. I want to be able to sell stuff. I'm a shopkeeper. Buying and selling is vitally important. So, but I take the mark of the beast, right? Yeah, wrong. Revelation 14. Let's read verses 9 through 11. You most certainly do not want the mark of the beast. Verse 9. Then a third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast and his image, and receives his mark on his forehead or on his hand, he himself shall also drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out full strength into the cup of his indignation. He shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascends for ever and ever. And they have no rest day or night, who worship the beast and his image, and whoever receives the mark of his name. So you don't want mark of the beast. Otherwise you'll suffer God's wrath, full strength, and you'll be tormented. And the smoke of your torment goes up forever. So it's definitely not something any of us want, the mark of the beast, right? Don't be fooled. And people are going to, obviously people are going to take it. I would think a very large number of people will take the mark of the beast because they'll be deceived. Like it says there in the last passage we read, he will deceive those that dwell on the earth, deceive them. Well, it'll be clever. It'll be something that's perhaps nuanced here, that you need to do this. Not just because of buying and selling, but other reasons. If you don't get this, perhaps you become dhimmi status. You have to pay a jizya tax. You don't get job protection. You don't get any health insurance. You don't get any of these things at all because that's only available to those who have the mark of the beast. And if you don't have that, you get diddly squat. And you're a subjugated, humiliated, second-rate citizen. So a lot of people will take it, right? And that's to their disadvantage, I would think, yeah. And you can see how it potentially can work out in the last passage, Revelation 20. And verse 4, John says, "And I saw thrones, and they sat on them, and judgment was committed to them. Then I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded for their witness to Jesus and for the word of God, who had not worshipped the beast or his image, and had not received his mark on their foreheads or on their hands, and they lived and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years.
Hallelujah.
But they had been beheaded because they didn't take the mark. So you take the mark, God will jump all over you, and you'll be troubled and tormented, and the smoke goes up forever. If you don't take the mark, you'll be beheaded. Or at least many people will be, not everybody, I guess, right? It'd be difficult, I guess, for the beast to catch everybody. But certainly a number of people who refuse to take the mark will be beheaded. You can probably think of a particular religion that's always had a high regard for taking heads off. We've seen TV only about 3 or 4 years ago, the guys in the orange suits and so on who were beheaded live on TV. That's been a long-standing practice of this particular well-known religion, beheading people. And that doesn't prove anything, of course, there, but it's certainly within keeping of the theme of the character, that those who create the mark of the beast, who demand that you worship the beast and its image and take the mark, and if you don't, you end up beheaded. I can think of one major world religion that has done that a lot in the past. And so what might the mark be? Well, that's something we might perhaps look at next week. But for now, we'll close there.